My name is Victoria Ashford, and at 72 years old, I never imagined I would find myself standing in my own kitchen, watching surveillance footage of my daughter and her husband casually discussing how to steal everything I had spent a lifetime building. But that's exactly where I was on a cold Tuesday morning when my phone buzzed with an alert, and I opened it to see Sophia and her husband Marcus standing in my dining room. Their voices low but clear through the security system I had secretly installed 3 weeks earlier. "She's getting weaker every day," Sophia said, her tone as casual as if she were discussing the weather. "Mom won't last through the winter. We just need to be patient a little longer." Marcus laughed, a sound that made my blood run cold. "Patient? We've been patient for 2 years, babe. I say we move things along." The lawyer said once we have her signature on that document, this whole estate becomes ours to manage. After that, well, accidents happen to old ladies all the time. I sat down heavily on the bench in my neighbor's kitchen, where I had been hiding for the past hour, my hands trembling as I gripped my phone. Sophia, my only daughter, the child I had carried, raised, loved with every fiber of my being. She was plotting not just to rob me, but to kill me. Let me start from the beginning, because this story, my story, deserves to be told from the moment I first sensed something was wrong. And if you're listening to this, perhaps you'll understand why I made the choices I did, why I fought back the way I did, and why sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us deepest. I was born in the small coastal town of Bridgemont, Massachusetts, where the salt air mixes with the scent of pine trees, and the winters are long and unforgiving. I married my husband Thomas when I was 23, fresh out of nursing school, full of dreams about the life we would build together. We bought a small house on Rosewood Avenue, a charming Victorian with bay windows and a garden that caught the morning sun. Thomas worked as an accountant, steady and reliable, while I took a position at Bridgemont General Hospital, working night shifts in the maternity ward. Our daughter Sophia arrived 5 years into our marriage, a beautiful baby girl with Thomas's dark curls and my green eyes. I remember holding her for the first time, feeling her tiny heartbeat against my chest, and thinking that nothing in my life had ever felt more right, more perfect, more meant to be. I promised her silently that I would protect her always, that I would give her every opportunity I never had, that she would never want for love or security. Thomas and I worked hard for 43 years. We saved every penny we could, invested wisely, lived modestly. The house was paid off by the time I turned 50. Thomas's accounting practice grew into something substantial, and my nursing career eventually led to a position as head of pediatric nursing at the hospital. We were never wealthy, but we were comfortable, secure, building something we could pass on to Sophia. Then, 7 years ago, Thomas had a stroke. It happened on a Thursday afternoon while he was preparing dinner, his favorite activity after retiring. I came home from volunteering at the community center to find him collapsed on the kitchen floor, one side of his face drooping, his words slurred and incomprehensible. I called the ambulance, rode with him to the hospital where I had worked for decades, held his hand as the doctors explained the damage to his brain was extensive. He lived for another 14 months, but he was never the same. The vibrant, sharp-minded man I had loved for 43 years was gone, replaced by someone who struggled to remember my name, who needed help with the most basic tasks, who looked at me sometimes with confusion rather than recognition. I cared for him myself, refusing to put him in a facility, bathing him, feeding him, reading to him from his favorite books, even when I wasn't sure he understood the words. When Thomas finally passed, I felt both crushing grief and terrible relief. The grief because I had lost my best friend, my partner, the father of my child. The relief because his suffering was over, and I could finally stop watching the man I loved fade away piece by piece. Sophia came to the funeral with Marcus, the man she had married 3 years earlier. I had never particularly warmed to Marcus Chen. He was 15 years older than Sophia. A real estate developer with expensive tastes and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. But Sophia seemed happy with him, and after Thomas's death, I was too exhausted, too grief-stricken to question her choices. I just wanted my daughter close, wanted to rebuild the relationship that had grown distant after she moved to Portland for Marcus's business. At the funeral, Sophia held my hand and cried appropriately. Marcus stood beside her in his designer suit, his expression somber. They stayed for 3 days, helping me sort through Thomas's things, organizing paperwork, making sure I was eating and sleeping. I was grateful for their presence, grateful not to be alone in that big house filled with memories. "Mom, you shouldn't stay here by yourself," Sophia said on their last evening, as we sat in the living room drinking tea. "This house is too big, too much maintenance for one person. Have you thought about moving into something smaller? Maybe one of those nice assisted living places?" I looked at her, surprised. I was 65 then, healthy, active, still volunteering 3 days a week. "Darling, I'm not ready for assisted living. I'm perfectly capable of managing the house." Marcus leaned forward, his expression concerned. "Victoria, we're just worried about you. These old houses require so much upkeep. What if something happens? What if you fall and there's no one here to help?" "I have neighbors," I said. "Helena next door checks on me every day, and I have my phone. I appreciate your concern, but I'm not leaving this house. Thomas and I built our life here. I'm not ready to let that go." Sophia exchanged a glance with Marcus that I couldn't quite read. "Okay, Mom, we understand. But promise us you'll think about it." I promised, and they left the next morning. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Over the following months, Sophia's calls became more frequent. At first, I was pleased she wanted to stay in touch. We had drifted apart after her marriage, and I craved that connection with my only child. But the conversations always seemed to circle back to the same topics: my health, my finances, my plans for the future. "Mom, have you updated your will lately?" she would ask. "You know, after Dad passed, you should make sure everything is in order." "I'm fine, darling. Everything is taken care of," I'd reassure her. "But have you thought about setting up a trust? Marcus knows some excellent estate lawyers. They could help you protect your assets." "Protect them from what?" I asked. "You know, taxes, complications, making sure things go smoothly when the time comes." The time comes. As if my death was an inevitability we were all just waiting for, something to plan around, rather than my actual life continuing. Then came the visits. Sophia and Marcus started driving down from Portland every few weeks, always with some excuse. They wanted to check on me, help with repairs, spend quality time together. But during those visits, I began to notice things. Small things at first, easy to dismiss as coincidence or paranoia. Documents would be moved in my study. Files I kept organized would appear shuffled, as if someone had been looking through them. My computer, which I rarely used, would be warm when I came downstairs in the morning, though I was certain I hadn't touched it the night before. Keys appeared in different places than where I had left them. My address book, which I kept in the kitchen drawer, showed up on the dining room table. When I mentioned these things to Sophia, she laughed gently and suggested I was getting forgetful. "It's normal at your age, Mom. Dad started forgetting things too, remember? Maybe we should have you see a doctor just to check." But I wasn't forgetting. I was 72, not 92. My mind was sharp. I still completed the newspaper crossword every morning. I managed my own finances, cooked my own meals, drove myself to appointments. There was nothing wrong with my memory. So I started paying closer attention. I noticed that Marcus always found excuses to be in my study during their visits, claiming he needed to make phone calls for work or check his email. I noticed that Sophia asked pointed questions about my bank accounts, my investments, the property deed. I noticed the way they exchanged looks when they thought I wasn't watching, silent communications that felt secretive, conspiratorial. 3 months ago, something happened that confirmed my worst suspicions. I came home from my weekly bridge club meeting to find Marcus in my bedroom, standing in front of my dresser. The jewelry box that Thomas had given me on our 20th anniversary was open on the bed. My mother's pearl necklace, my grandmother's ruby ring, all my precious pieces laid out as if on display. "Excuse me, Marcus," I said from the doorway, my voice sharp. What are you doing? End of paragraph. He turned, startled, his expression cycling rapidly through surprise, guilt, and then settling on smooth concern. Victoria, you scared me. I was just looking for Sophia. She said she left her sweater in here. End of paragraph. Why were you going through my jewelry? I wasn't. He gestured vaguely at the box. This was already open. I noticed it when I came in and thought maybe something was wrong. Maybe someone had broken in. End of paragraph. It was a plausible explanation, almost believable, except I knew with absolute certainty that I had closed that jewelry box that morning, had locked it with the small key I kept on my key ring, the key that was now sitting on the dresser beside the open box. Please leave my room, I said quietly. He hesitated, then nodded and walked past me into the hallway. I closed the door behind him, turned the lock, and stood there with my heart pounding, understanding with crystalline clarity that something was very, very wrong. That night, after Sophia and Marcus had gone to bed in the guest room, I sat up in my own room with the lights off, thinking. I thought about the moved documents, the open jewelry box, the constant questions about my finances. I thought about the way Marcus always steered conversations toward estate planning and wills. I thought about Sophia's increasingly frequent suggestions that I was becoming forgetful, incapable, in need of help managing my own life. And I understood what they were doing. They were building a narrative, creating evidence that I was mentally declining, incompetent, unable to care for myself. But why? I wasn't wealthy by any means, but the house was paid off, worth perhaps $400,000 in Bridgemont's current market. I had Thomas's life insurance, about $200,000, and our combined retirement savings, another $300,000. $900,000 total. Not a fortune, but enough to kill for, apparently. The next morning, I did something I had never done before. I lied to my daughter. I told Sophia and Marcus that I wasn't feeling well, that I needed to rest, that perhaps they should head home early. They protested, of course, all concern and offers to stay and help, but I was firm. I needed them gone so I could think, plan, understand what I was dealing with. After they left, I sat in my kitchen and made a list. I wrote down every strange occurrence, every odd conversation, every moment that had made me uncomfortable over the past months. The pattern was unmistakable. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't my imagination. My daughter and her husband were systematically working to take control of my life and ultimately my assets. I needed proof. I needed to understand the full extent of their plan, and I needed to protect myself before it was too late. That's when I called my old friend Margaret Winters. Margaret and I had worked together at Bridgemont General for 30 years. She had retired to Florida 5 years ago, but we still spoke regularly. More importantly, Margaret's son was a police detective, and her daughter was a family law attorney. I trusted Margaret implicitly, and I needed advice from someone outside my immediate situation. "Victoria," Margaret said when she answered, her warm voice exactly what I needed to hear. "What a lovely surprise. How are you, dear?" "Margaret, I need help." The words came out more desperate than I intended, and I heard her tone shift immediately to concern. "What's wrong? Are you hurt? Should I call someone?" "No, nothing like that. I'm fine physically. But Margaret, I think my daughter is trying to steal from me. Maybe worse." There was a long pause. "Tell me everything." I spent the next hour detailing every suspicion, every strange incident, every conversation that had left me uneasy. Margaret listened without interrupting, and when I finished, I could hear the worry in her voice. "Victoria, this sounds like what my daughter calls financial elder abuse. It's more common than you'd think, and often the perpetrators are family members. You need to document everything, and you need to do it quietly. Don't let Sophia or Marcus know you're suspicious." "How do I document it?" "They're careful. They don't do anything obvious when they think I'm watching. Security cameras, Margaret said immediately. My son used them in a case last year, caught an aide stealing from an elderly client. You can get small cameras that connect to your phone, record everything, store it in the cloud. They'll never know they're being filmed. Where would I even get something like that? Amazon, dear. Welcome to the modern world. I'll send you links to the ones my son recommended. You can have them deliver within 2 days. Set them up in key areas, your study, the living room, anywhere they might search when they think you're not watching. And Victoria, be careful. If they're planning what I think they're planning, confronting them too early could be dangerous. The word dangerous hung in the air between us. Dangerous, my own daughter. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel, and tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community, so we can bring more truthful stories for you. The cameras arrived on a Thursday. Small, discreet devices, no bigger than a USB drive, disguised as smoke detectors and picture frames. I spent an entire day installing them, following the instructions on my phone, placing them strategically throughout the house. One in the study, angled toward my desk and filing cabinet. One in the living room, covering the entrance to the hallway where my bedroom was located. One in the dining room, where important family discussions always seemed to happen. And one in the kitchen, because I had learned over 72 years that people always reveal their true selves in kitchens, when they think they're in private, comfortable spaces. The app on my phone showed me live feeds from all 4 cameras. I could watch in real time or review recorded footage from the past week. The videos were automatically uploaded to a cloud storage system that only I could access. For the first time in months, I felt like I had some control over my situation. I didn't have to wait long for results. Sophia called 2 days after I installed the cameras. Mom, Marcus and I are going to drive down this weekend. We thought we could help you with some spring cleaning. Maybe sort through Dad's things in the attic. My stomach tightened. Thomas's things in the attic included boxes of our financial records, decades of tax returns, insurance policies, investment statements, everything someone would need to understand the full extent of my assets. That's sweet of you, darling, but I'm actually planning to visit Helena's daughter in Boston this weekend. I wasn't, but they didn't need to know that. There was a pause on the line. Oh, when did you plan that? Just this week. We're going to catch up, maybe see a show. I haven't been to Boston in ages. Another pause. Mom, are you sure that's safe? Driving to Boston by yourself? Helena's daughter is picking me up, dear. I'll be perfectly safe. I could almost hear Sophia's frustration through the phone. Okay, well, maybe the weekend after. Then? Of course. I'll let you know. I didn't go to Boston. Instead, I spent the weekend at Helena's house next door, watching my security camera feeds on my phone. And on Saturday afternoon, exactly when I knew they would think I was safely out of town, Sophia and Marcus's car pulled into my driveway. I watched from Helena's guest room window as they used the spare key I kept hidden under a flower pot, the one I had told Sophia about years ago for emergencies, to let themselves into my house. My heart was pounding as I opened the security app and began recording. They went straight to my study. Marcus rifled through my desk drawers with practiced efficiency, while Sophia photographed documents with her phone. I watched, my hands shaking, as my daughter systematically documented every aspect of my financial life. Bank statements, investment portfolios, the deed to the house, insurance policies, everything. This is better than we thought, Marcus said, his voice clear through my phone speaker. With the house and the accounts, we're looking at close to $1 million, maybe more if we can liquidate the investments, before anyone notices. Sophia nodded, still photographing. We need to move faster. She's not showing enough signs of decline yet. People might question it if we try to take control too soon. Then we help things along. Marcus pulled out a folder from the desk, studying it. These are the medications her doctor prescribed after Thomas died. Anxiety, depression, sleep aids. We can use these. My blood ran cold. They weren't just planning to steal from me. You're planning to drug me, to make me appear incompetent, to create a medical record that would support their claims that I couldn't care for myself. Sophia looked uncomfortable for the first time. Marcus, I don't know. You don't know what? This was your idea, remember? You said we'd waited long enough, that you deserved this money for putting up with her all these years. His voice hardened. We're too far in to back out now. Either we do this right, or we walk away with nothing. Your choice. Sophia set down her phone and looked at her husband. I waited, hoping, praying that my daughter would choose me, would choose right over wrong, would remember that she was my child, that I had loved her, raised her, given her everything I had. Okay, she said quietly. We do it your way. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. I watched them spend another hour in my house, going through my belongings, photographing documents, making plans to destroy my life. When they finally left, I sat in Helena's guest room for a long time, staring at nothing, trying to process what I had just witnessed. Helena found me there an hour later. Tears streaming down my face. She sat beside me without a word, and wrapped her arms around me while I sobbed against her shoulder. Helena had been my neighbor for 35 years. She'd been there when Sophia was born, when Thomas had his stroke, when I buried my husband. She knew my family, knew my life, and she believed me when I finally showed her the video footage. "Oh, Victoria," she whispered, her own eyes filling with tears. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. But I can't let them win. I can't let them do this." Helena squeezed my hand. "You won't. We'll figure this out together." That night, I made a phone call that would change everything. I called Margaret's daughter, the family law attorney in Florida, and told her everything. Sarah Winters listened to my story, reviewed the video footage I emailed her, and spoke words that both terrified and empowered me. "Mrs. Ashford, what you've documented is criminal elder abuse. This isn't just a civil matter anymore. Your daughter and son-in-law are planning to commit fraud, possibly worse. You need to involve law enforcement immediately." "But she's my daughter." "I understand, but she's also committing crimes against you. If you don't stop this now, you could lose everything, including potentially your life if they escalate their plans. The mention of using your medications to incapacitate you is particularly alarming." I closed my eyes. What do I do? "First, you need to secure your assets. Tomorrow morning, I want you to go to your bank and alert them to potential fraud. Tell them no transactions over $1,000 should be processed without your in-person approval and identification. Second, I'm going to refer you to a colleague in Massachusetts who specializes in these cases. Her name is Patricia Donovan, and she's excellent. Third, you need to take those videos to the police. File a report. Get this on record before they have a chance to act on their plans. What if no one believes me? What if they say I'm just a paranoid old woman? You have video evidence. Clear, indisputable documentation of them breaking into your home and discussing criminal activity. Trust me, Mrs. Ashford, they'll believe you. And you see all of that in the text. A 72-year-old woman accusing her own daughter of plotting against her. It sounded like the paranoid delusions of someone losing their grip on reality. Exactly the narrative Sophia and Marcus were trying to create. But I had evidence now. I had proof, and I was going to fight. The next morning, I walked into Bridgemont Community Bank, where I had been a customer for 48 years, and asked to speak with the manager. Karen Davidson had taken over the branch 3 years ago, a sharp woman in her 40s who had always treated me with respect and professionalism. "Mrs. Ashford," she said, gesturing me into her office. "What can I help you with today?" I sat down and pulled out my phone, opening the security footage. "Karen, I need to show you something, and then I need your help protecting my accounts." I watched her face as she viewed the video, saw her expression shift from curiosity to shock to professional concern. When the footage ended, she sat back in her chair and let out a long breath. "Mrs. Ashford, I'm so sorry. This must be incredibly difficult for you." "It is. But right now, I need to make sure they can't access my money. Can you put flags on my accounts? Absolutely. I'll set it up so that any transaction over $500 requires your physical presence in the branch, with valid identification. I'll also make a note in your file about potential fraud attempts. If anyone tries to use power of attorney or any other authorization to access your accounts, we'll verify directly with you before processing anything. Can they see that you've done this? Will there be any indication? Karen shook her head. No, these security measures are internal. They won't know anything has changed until they try to make a transaction and get denied. I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. Thank you. There's something else I should tell you, Karen said, her expression troubled. About 6 months ago, a woman came in claiming to be your daughter, said she had concerns about your memory, and wanted to be added as a joint account holder for your checking account. We require specific documentation for that kind of change, and she didn't have it, so we denied the request. My stomach dropped. Did she give a name? Sophia Chen. She had identification and everything. I remember because she became quite upset when we wouldn't process the request without your explicit written authorization. 6 months ago, this had been going on even longer than I thought. Sophia had been actively trying to gain access to my money, while I was completely unaware, trusting her, believing she had my best interests at heart. Did she try again? No. After that visit, we never heard from her, but, Mrs. Ashford, if she's escalating to the kind of plans you showed me in that video, you need to involve the police. This is beyond what the bank can protect you from. I nodded slowly. I know. That's my next stop. The Bridgemont Police Department was housed in a modest brick building on Main Street, sandwiched between the post office and a coffee shop. I had passed it thousands of times in my life, never imagining I would walk through those doors to report a crime committed by my own child. The officer at the front desk was young, probably not much older than 30, with kind eyes and a patient demeanor. "Can I help you, ma'am?" he asked. "I need to file a report. My daughter and her husband are planning to steal from me." He pulled out a form and a pen. "Why don't you start from the beginning?" I told him everything. The strange visits, the moved documents, the conversation I had overheard about making me appear incompetent. I showed him the security footage on my phone, watching his expression shift from polite attention to serious concern. "Ma'am, I'm going to have Detective Torres speak with you. What you're describing is potentially criminal elder abuse, and she's our specialist in these cases. Can you wait here for a few minutes?" Detective Isabel Torres was a woman in her early 50s, with steel gray hair pulled back in a practical bun, and the sharp, assessing eyes of someone who had seen humanity at its worst. She led me to a small interview room, offered me coffee, and settled into the chair across from me with a notepad. "Mrs. Ashford, Officer Riley briefed me on your situation. I want to hear everything in your own words. Take your time." For the 3rd time that day, I recounted my story. But Detective Torres asked questions the others hadn't, digging deeper into timelines, specific statements, financial details. She reviewed the security footage multiple times, making notes, her expression growing darker with each viewing. "Mrs. Ashford, you've documented something very serious here. Breaking and entering, conspiracy to commit fraud, discussion of drugging you to make you appear incompetent. These are felony charges we're talking about. I know. I have to ask, and please don't take this the wrong way, but is there any chance you've misinterpreted their intentions? Sometimes family discussions about care and finances can sound more sinister than they are." I met her eyes directly. "Detective, I worked as a nurse for 45 years. I've seen real mental decline. I know the difference between my mind failing and my daughter plotting against me. Watch that video again. Listen to the words. Tell me honestly if you think I'm misinterpreting." She watched the footage again, her jaw tightening. "No, ma'am, I don't think you're misinterpreting at all. What you've captured is clear evidence of criminal intent." "So what happens now?" "Now we build a case. I'll need copies of all your security footage. I'll also need to interview witnesses, anyone who might have observed suspicious behavior. Your neighbor, your bank manager, anyone else who can corroborate your account. And Mrs. Ashford, I need to ask, do you feel safe in your home? The question caught me off guard. Did I feel safe? In the house where I had lived for 49 years, where I had raised my daughter, where every room held memories of a life well lived? No. For the first time in my life, I did not feel safe in my own home. Detective Torres nodded. That's wise. Helena next door. I don't want to be alone in the house anymore. Speaking of calmness, continue staying there until we've resolved this situation. I'm going to move quickly on this, Mrs. Ashford. Based on the conversation in that video about using your medications to incapacitate you, I consider this an active threat. I'll be in touch within 48 hours. I walked out of the police station into the bright afternoon sunlight, feeling both relieved and terrified. I had done it. I had reported my own daughter to the police. There was no going back now, no pretending none of this had happened, no hoping it was all a misunderstanding. I had chosen to fight, and whatever came next, I would have to face it. Helena was waiting for me in her kitchen when I returned, a fresh pot of tea already steeping on the counter. She took one look at my face and simply opened her arms. I walked into her embrace and let myself be held. Let myself feel the weight of everything I had done that day. Did they believe you? She asked quietly. Yes, they're building a case. Detective Torres says she'll move quickly. Helena pulled back and guided me to a chair at her kitchen table, pouring tea into delicate floral cups that had belonged to her mother. You did the right thing, Victoria. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you protected yourself. You probably saved your own life. She's my daughter, Helena. I carried her for 9 months. I held her when she was born. I stayed up nights when she was sick, taught her to read, walked her to school every morning for 8 years. How did it come to this? Helena wrapped her weathered hands around mine. Some people aren't who we hope they'll be. That's not your failing, Victoria. That's theirs. We sat in silence, drinking tea, watching the afternoon light fade through the kitchen window. Across the small yard separating our houses, I could see my own home, the yellow Victorian with white trim that Thomas and I had painted ourselves one summer 30 years ago. It looked peaceful, welcoming, completely unaware of the darkness that had crept into its rooms. My phone rang, startling us both. I glanced at the screen and felt my heart sink. Sophia, don't answer it, Helena warned. I have to. If I don't, she'll know something's wrong. She'll know I'm on to them. I answered, keeping my voice steady. Hello, darling. Mom, hey, I was just calling to see how Boston was. Did you have a good time with Helena's daughter? The lie came easily now. It was lovely. We saw a wonderful show at the theater. Had dinner at that little Italian place near the Common. Just what I needed. That's great. Listen, Marcus and I were thinking of coming down next weekend. We could help you with some projects around the house. More searching, more photographing, more building their case against me. Actually, darling, I'm going to be quite busy. I've signed up for a watercolor class at the community center, and Helena and I are planning a trip to Newport to see the gardens. A pause. Mom, you're doing a lot of traveling lately. Are you sure you're up for all this activity? There it was. The concern, carefully crafted to sound like love, but designed to plant seeds of doubt. Are you sure you're capable? Are you sure you're not declining? Are you sure you can manage? I'm perfectly fine, Sophia. In fact, I feel better than I have in years. All this activity is good for me. Another pause, longer this time. Okay, well, call me if you need anything. Of course, darling. Love you. Love you too, Mom. The words felt hollow, meaningless. Did she love me? Had she ever? Or had I always been just an obstacle between her and money, something to be managed and eventually removed? I ended the call and looked at Helena. She's suspicious. Let her be. You're protected now. The bank knows, the police know. She can't hurt you anymore. But even as Helena said the words, I wondered if they were true. Sophia and Marcus had proven they were willing to break laws, to plan violence, to do whatever it took to get what they wanted. A police investigation might only make them more desperate, more dangerous. That night, lying in Helena's guest room, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept returning to the little girl Sophia had been, the daughter I thought I knew. I remembered her at 5, dancing in the backyard in her mother's shoes, convinced she was a princess. At 10, reading under the covers with a flashlight long after bedtime. At 16, crying on my shoulder after her first heartbreak, letting me stroke her hair and tell her everything would be okay. When had she changed? Or had she always been this person, and I had simply refused to see it? My phone buzzed with a text message. Margaret, checking in from Florida. How are you holding up? I typed back. I reported her to the police today. There's no going back now. Margaret's response came immediately. You're one of the bravest people I know. Thomas would be so proud of you. Would he? Thomas had adored Sophia. She had been his princess, his perfect little girl who could do no wrong. Would he have believed what she had become? Or would he have made excuses, blamed Marcus, convinced himself there had to be some misunderstanding? I would never know. And perhaps that was a blessing. The next 2 days passed in a strange limbo. I went through the motions of normal life, attending my watercolor class, helping Helena with her gardening, shopping for groceries. But underneath the routine activities, I was waiting, constantly checking my phone for updates from Detective Torres, jumping at every unexpected sound, watching my security cameras obsessively for any sign that Sophia and Marcus had returned to my house. They hadn't. The cameras showed my home exactly as I had left it, peaceful and undisturbed, a museum of a life I wasn't sure I could ever return to. On the 3rd day, Detective Torres called. Mrs. Ashford, can you come to the station? I have some information I need to share with you. 20 minutes later, I sat across from her in the same interview room where I had given my statement. She had a thick folder on the table between us, and her expression was grave. Mrs. Ashford, we've done some digging into your son-in-law's background. Marcus Chen isn't who he claims to be. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? Marcus Chen is his legal name, but he changed it 8 years ago. He was born Marcus Huang, and he has a criminal record, and so is his son, Dorothy Patterson, this document sliding it across the table. I looked down at a police report from Seattle, dated 12 years ago. The charges were financial fraud, identity theft, and exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Previous. Marcus served 18 months in prison for defrauding an elderly woman in Seattle. Her name was Dorothy Patterson. She was 83 years old, and he convinced her to sign over her house and savings to him, claiming he was going to help her manage her finances. By the time her family realized what had happened, he had drained $200,000 from her accounts and disappeared. They caught him in Portland trying to sell her house. I felt sick. Did Sophia know about this? We're not sure yet. The timeline suggests they met shortly after his release from prison, which could be coincidental, or it could be that she was aware of his past and saw an opportunity. An opportunity. Detective Torres's expression was sympathetic but direct. Mrs. Ashford, there's a pattern here. Marcus targets elderly individuals, gains their trust through false pretenses, and systematically drains their assets. The fact that he married your daughter shortly before beginning to show interest in your finances suggests this may have been planned from the start. The words hit me like a physical blow. My daughter hadn't just married a criminal. She had possibly been recruited by one, groomed to help him target her own mother. There's more, Torres continued. We've been monitoring your home with the security footage you've given us access to. This morning at 4 a.m., Marcus Chen returned to your house alone. She pulled out her laptop and opened a video file. I watched as Marcus's car pulled into my driveway in darkness, as he let himself in with the spare key, as he moved directly to my bedroom. My hands started shaking as I watched him pull out my jewelry box. the one he had been caught with months ago. But this time, he didn't just look. He removed pieces: my grandmother's ruby ring, my mother's pearls, the diamond earrings Thomas had given me on our 40th anniversary. He photographed each piece, then carefully returned them to the box, except for the pearls. Those he slipped into his pocket. "He's stealing from you," Torres said quietly. "Small items that you might not notice immediately. Items he can sell for cash. Why would he take that risk? If they're planning to eventually get everything, why steal now? P. Because they're impatient. Or because they need money immediately. We've also discovered that Marcus has significant gambling debts, approximately $70,000 owed to various casinos in Portland and online betting sites. He's in financial trouble, Mrs. Ashford. That makes him desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things. P. I stared at the frozen image on the screen, Marcus standing in my bedroom, my mother's pearls in his hand, a cold smile on his face. This man, this criminal, had been in my home, had sat at my table, had called me Mom with that false warmth in his voice. P. What happens now? My voice sounded distant, disconnected, as if someone else was speaking. P. Now we arrest him. We have clear evidence of breaking and entering, theft, and based on your previous security footage, conspiracy to commit fraud and elder abuse. We'll pick him up today. As for your daughter, we're still building that case. Her involvement is clear on the videos, but we want to make sure we have everything documented before we move. Will I have to testify? In court? Against my own daughter? Torres reached across the table and touched my hand gently. Mrs. Ashford, I know this is devastating. I can't imagine how painful this is for you. But yes, if this goes to trial, your testimony will likely be required. You're the victim here. Your voice matters. I nodded slowly, feeling tears burn behind my eyes. When will you arrest Marcus? Within the hour. We've been tracking his location, and he's currently at the apartment he shares with your daughter in Portland. We'll execute the arrest warrant there. Mrs. Ashford, I need to warn you. When we arrest Marcus, Sophia will likely call you. She'll be upset, possibly angry. She may try to convince you to drop the charges, to say this is all a misunderstanding. I need you to be prepared for that. I understand, but I didn't, not really. How could I prepare myself for the moment my daughter called to beg me to save the man who had been systematically planning to rob and possibly kill me? How could I steel myself against the tears, the pleas, the accusations that I was ruining her life? I left the police station and returned to Helena's house, where I sat in her living room, watching my phone, waiting for the call I knew would come. Helena sat with me, her knitting needles clicking in a steady rhythm that was the only sound in the room. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. The call came 2 hours later. Sophia's name lit up my screen, and I felt my heart constrict. Mom, what did you do? Her voice was shrill, hysterical. The police just arrested Marcus. They're saying he stole from you, that he broke into your house. Mom, you have to fix this. Tell them it's a mistake. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to remain steady. It's not a mistake, Sophia. What are you talking about? Of course it's a mistake. Marcus would never steal from you. He loves you. We both do. Mom, please, you have to call the police. Tell them they're wrong. I can't do that, darling, because they're not wrong. I have video footage of Marcus in my bedroom at 4 o'clock this morning, taking my mother's pearls. I have footage of both of you breaking into my house, photographing my documents, planning to drug me to make me appear incompetent. I have recordings of you discussing how to take control of my assets. Silence. Long, terrible silence. When Sophia spoke again, her voice had changed, had shed the hysteria, and revealed something colder underneath. You've been spying on us. I've been protecting myself. From your own daughter? From your own family? Yes. The word came out stronger than I expected. From people who were planning to steal from me, to hurt me, perhaps worse. End quote. Worse? Mom, what are you even talking about? We were trying to help you. You're getting older. We need someone to look after your finances, make sure you're not taken advantage of. That's all we were doing. By breaking into my house? By photographing my documents without my knowledge? By discussing how to use my medications to make me appear mentally incompetent? Stop breaking into my house. By discussing how to use my medications to make me appear mentally incompetent? Unquote. By discussing how to use my medications to make me appear mentally incompetent. Unquote. By discussing how to use my medications to make me appear mentally incompetent. Worse, Mom, what are you even talking about? We were trying to help you. You're getting older. You need someone to look after your finances, make sure you're not taken advantage of. That's all we were doing. By breaking into my house? By photographing my documents without my knowledge? That's all we were doing. End quote. By discussing how to use my medications to make me appear mentally incompetent? Unquote. By breaking into my house? By photographing my documents without my knowledge? That's all we were doing. By breaking into my house? By photographing my documents without my knowledge? That's all we were doing. End quote. By breaking into my house? By photographing my documents without my knowledge? Unquote. By breaking into my house? By photographing my documents without my knowledge? That's all we were doing. Worse? Mom, what are you even talking about? We were trying to help you. By breaking into my house? By photographing my documents without my knowledge? That's all we were doing. Worse? Mom, what are you even Hair silence. Then, I don't know what you think you heard, but you're confused. You're not thinking clearly. Maybe you do need help managing things. And there it was. The strategy they had been building toward all along. Turn it back on me. Make me the problem. Make my legitimate concerns sound like paranoid delusions. I'm not confused, Sophia. I'm perfectly clear about what's happening. The police have evidence. The bank has been alerted. My lawyer has been consulted. You and Marcus will not be taking my home, my money, or my life. Your life? Jesus, Mom. Do you even hear yourself? You sound completely paranoid. This is insane. And what's insane is that my own daughter would conspire with a convicted felon to rob her own mother. A sharp intake of breath. You investigated Marcus. The police did. Did you know about his record? Did you know he served time for doing to another elderly woman exactly what he was planning to do to me? That was different. That was a misunderstanding. The charges were exaggerated. So you did know. The confirmation hurt more than I expected. You knew you were married to a man who had been convicted of elder abuse, and you helped him target me anyway. It wasn't like that. Her voice had shifted again, becoming defensive, almost whiny. Marcus made a mistake years ago. He paid for it. He's a different person now. And we weren't targeting you. We were trying to help you manage your affairs because you're clearly not capable of doing it yourself anymore. I am perfectly capable. Are you? You're 72 years old, living alone in a house that's too big for you, pretending your dead husband is still here. That's not healthy, Mom. That's not normal. The words hit like a slap. How dare you? It's true. You've been holding on to Dad's things like he's going to walk through the door any day. You still use Mom's old bank card. You talk to her flowers. You need help, and if you were thinking clearly, you'd see that Marcus and I are trying to give it to you. I felt something inside me harden, crystallize into absolute certainty. This was not my daughter speaking. Or perhaps it was, and I had simply never wanted to see who she truly was. Either way, the woman on the other end of this call was a stranger. Sophia, let me be very clear. Marcus has been arrested for theft and breaking and entering. Police are building a case that will likely result in fraud charges and conspiracy charges for both of you. You will not inherit my house. You will not access my accounts. You will not control my life. I have protected my assets, alerted all relevant institutions, and documented everything you and Marcus have done. If you try to contact me again without a lawyer present, I will treat it as harassment and report it to the police. Do you understand? You're really doing this. Her voice was flat now, emotionless. You're really choosing to destroy your own family. I'm not destroying anything. I'm protecting myself from people who would have destroyed me. I'm your daughter. Yes, and that makes what you've done so much worse. I ended the call before she could respond, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Helena was beside me instantly, wrapping her arms around me as I finally let myself cry, great heaving sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep in my chest. I know, honey, Helena murmured, stroking my hair. I know it hurts, but you did the right thing. You protected yourself. She hates me now. Maybe, or maybe someday she'll understand what she did wrong. But either way, Victoria, you saved your own life today. Don't you forget that. I clung to Helena and let myself grieve. Not just for the relationship I had lost with my daughter, but for the illusion I had been living under, the belief that family meant safety, that love from a mother would automatically be returned by a child. I grieved for the years I had spent building a life I thought would be passed down to someone who cherished it, only to discover it was viewed as nothing more than an asset to be liquidated. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal proceedings and police interviews. Marcus was charged with multiple felonies: breaking and entering, theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted elder abuse. His bail was set high enough that he couldn't pay it, and he remained in jail awaiting trial. Sophia was not immediately charged, though Detective Torres assured me the investigation was ongoing. Apparently, building a case against a family member required extra care, extra documentation, extra certainty. They wanted to make sure every charge would stick. In the meantime, I remained at Helena's house, watching my own home through security cameras like it was a stranger's property. Patricia Donovan, the attorney Sarah Winters had referred me to, worked efficiently to ensure my legal protection. She filed restraining orders against both Sophia and Marcus, preventing them from coming within 500 feet of my home or contacting me directly. She updated my will, removing Sophia as beneficiary, and instead establishing a trust that would donate my estate to charities upon my death. She created power of attorney documents that specified exactly who could make decisions on my behalf should I become incapacitated, and neither Sophia nor Marcus were on that list. "Mrs. Ashford," Patricia said during one of our meetings in her downtown office, "I want you to understand something. What your daughter and son-in-law did to you, what they plan to do, it's more common than you might think. The National Center on Elder Abuse estimates that 1 in 10 Americans over 65 experience some form of abuse, and the perpetrators are family members in 60% of those cases. That's terrible. It is. But it also means you're not alone. There are resources, support groups, other people who understand what you're going through. I'd like to give you some information about those services, if you're interested." I took the brochure she offered, though I wasn't sure I could face a room full of strangers, sharing stories of being betrayed by their own children. The pain was too raw, too fresh. Maybe someday, but not yet. "There's something else I need to discuss with you," Patricia continued, her expression serious. "Marcus's trial is scheduled for 3 months from now. You'll be called to testify. The prosecution will ask you to describe the events, to verify the security footage, to explain the impact of their actions on your life. Are you prepared for that?" "I have to be, don't I?" "You do, but I want you to know it won't be easy. Marcus's defense attorney will try to discredit you. They'll suggest you're confused, that you misinterpreted innocent actions, that your grief over your husband has clouded your judgment. They'll make you feel like you're the one on trial. And how do I prepare for that? By telling the truth, by staying calm, by remembering that you have evidence on your side. Video footage doesn't lie, Mrs. Ashford. Bank records don't lie. Police reports don't lie. All you have to do is tell your story honestly, and let the evidence speak for itself. I nodded, trying to absorb her confidence, but inside I felt terrified. Testifying meant facing Marcus in court, seeing Sophia in the audience supporting her husband, me living everything that had happened in front of strangers who would judge whether my pain was real or imagined. 2 months into this nightmare, something unexpected happened. I received a letter, handwritten on cream-colored stationery, addressed to me at Helena's house. The return address was a women's correctional facility about an hour away. The name on the envelope was Dorothy Patterson. I remembered that name. The elderly woman Marcus had defrauded in Seattle, the one whose case had sent him to prison 12 years ago. With trembling hands, I opened the letter. Dear Mrs. Ashford, I hope this letter finds you in better spirits than I was when I learned what happened to you. Detective Torres contacted me last month, asking if I would be willing to testify in Marcus Huang's trial. She mentioned you might benefit from hearing from someone who has been where you are now. I want you to know that what you're feeling, the shame, the guilt, the sense that somehow you should have known, should have protected yourself better, all of it is normal. I felt it too. When Marcus came into my life, I was lonely, grieving my husband who had passed 2 years earlier, and desperate for someone to help me manage affairs I no longer had the energy to handle alone. He was charming. He was attentive. He made me feel cared for. And by the time I realized what he was doing, he had already taken everything. My children blamed me. They said I should have been more careful, should have consulted them before trusting a stranger. Our relationships never recovered. I spent my final years alone, broken, ashamed of what I had allowed to happen. But here's what I learned, Mrs. Ashford. It wasn't my fault. Just as what happened to you isn't your fault. Predators like Marcus Chen, or Marcus Huang, or whatever name he's using now, they're skilled at identifying vulnerable targets and exploiting trust. They study human psychology. They know exactly which buttons to push, which fears to amplify, which hopes to manipulate. You didn't fail. You were targeted by an expert criminal, and you did something I never had the courage to do. You fought back. You documented his crimes. You went to the police. You protected yourself before it was too late. I'm 87 years old now. I'm writing this from a care facility where I'll spend my remaining days. I have almost nothing left from the life I built with my husband. But I have one thing: satisfaction knowing that my testimony helped put Marcus away once before. And I'll gladly testify again to make sure he stays there this time. Be strong, Mrs. Ashford. Be proud of what you've done. And don't let anyone, not your daughter, not Marcus's attorneys, not even your own guilt, convince you that you're anything other than a survivor. With solidarity and respect, Dorothy Patterson, Strong P. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. This woman, this stranger who had suffered the same betrayal I had reached out across the miles to offer me the one thing I desperately needed: validation. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't confused. I wasn't a bitter old woman destroying her family. I was a survivor of a deliberate, calculated crime. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my purse. I would carry it with me to the trial. When Marcus's attorney tried to make me doubt myself, tried to suggest I had misunderstood or overreacted, I would remember Dorothy Patterson's words. I would remember that I had done the right thing. The trial began on a cold November morning. The courthouse was an imposing granite building downtown, with marble floors and high ceilings that made every sound echo. I sat in the waiting area outside the courtroom, Patricia beside me, reviewing my testimony notes for what felt like the 100th time. Remember, Patricia said quietly, answer only what's asked. Don't volunteer extra information. If you need a moment to compose yourself, take it. The judge will allow breaks if you need them. I nodded, my mouth dry. Through the courtroom doors, I could see people filing in, taking their seats. Reporters with notepads, curious townspeople who had read about the case in the local paper. And in the front row, directly behind the defense table, sat Sophia. My daughter looked different, thinner, pale. She wore a conservative navy dress and minimal jewelry. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun. She was playing a role, I realized. The devoted wife, the innocent daughter, the victim of her mother's delusions. When our eyes met across the courtroom, I waited for something. Remorse, recognition, any sign of the girl I had raised. But Sophia's gaze was cold, assessing, calculating. She looked at me the way Marcus must have looked at Dorothy Patterson, like I was an obstacle to be overcome. Nothing more. I looked away first, unable to bear the emptiness in my daughter's eyes. "All rise," the bailiff called, and we stood as Judge Catherine Morrison entered the courtroom. She was a woman in her 60s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that swept the room with authority. The trial began with opening statements. The prosecutor, a serious young woman named Amanda Chen, no relation to Marcus, she had assured me, laid out the case methodically. Breaking and entering, theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, pattern of predatory behavior toward elderly victims. She spoke clearly, confidently, painting a picture of Marcus as a career criminal who had never stopped exploiting vulnerable people, even after serving time for his previous crimes. Marcus's defense attorney, a slick man in an expensive suit named Robert Blackwell, countered with a narrative I had expected, but still found infuriating. Marcus Chen was a reformed man, he argued. He had made mistakes in his youth, paid his debt to society, and rebuilt his life. His relationship with his mother-in-law was complicated, certainly, but there was no criminal intent. Any actions he took in Mrs. Ashford's home were done with her implicit permission or with the genuine desire to help her manage affairs she was increasingly unable to handle alone. Then came the witnesses. Detective Torres testified first, walking the jury through the investigation, the security footage, the evidence of theft and conspiracy. She was professional, thorough, unshakable even under cross-examination. Karen Davidson from the bank testified about the flag on my accounts, about Sophia's previous attempt to gain joint access, about my clear mental competence when I came to report potential fraud. Helena testified, her voice steady as she described observing Sophia and Marcus's visits, their behavior, the conversations she had overheard that made her concerned for my safety. And then it was my turn. The prosecution calls Victoria Ashford to the stand. I stood on trembling legs and walked to the witness box, my hand on the Bible as I swore to tell the truth. Looking out at the courtroom, I saw dozens of faces turned toward me, judging, assessing, deciding whether I was a confused old woman or a credible victim. Amanda Chen approached with a gentle smile. "Mrs. Ashford, thank you for being here today. I know this is difficult. Can you tell the court about your relationship with the defendant, Marcus Chen?" I took a deep breath and began. I told them about meeting Marcus when Sophia brought him home, about welcoming him into my family despite my reservations. I described the years that followed, the increasing visits, the strange occurrences that made me suspicious. I explained finding Marcus with my jewelry box, installing the security cameras, discovering the footage that revealed their true intentions. Amanda played the videos for the jury. The courtroom fell silent as we watched Marcus and Sophia break into my home, photograph my documents, discuss drugging me. When Marcus's voice came through the speakers, "Accidents happen to old ladies all the time," I heard several jury members gasp. "Mrs. Ashford," Amanda said softly, "how did you feel when you saw this footage?" "Terrified," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "Betrayed, heartbroken. This was my daughter, my only child, planning to rob me, perhaps worse." "What do you mean by worse?" "The way they talked about drugging me, about making me appear incompetent, about accidents happening. It sounded like they were planning to kill me." "Objection." Robert Blackwell was on his feet. "Speculation, Your Honor. The witness is drawing conclusions not supported by the evidence." Judge Morrison considered. "I'll allow it. The witness is describing her interpretation of the conversation. The jury can decide what weight to give that interpretation. Continue, Mrs. Ashford." I looked directly at the jury. I worked as a nurse for 45 years. I've seen how elderly patients are sometimes exploited by people they trust. I recognize the pattern. And the mention of using my medications, the talk of accidents, it terrified me because I understood what they were planning. Amanda nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Ashford. No further questions. Then came the hard part. Cross-examination. Robert Blackwell approached the witness stand with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes, the kind worn by people who have learned to weaponize charm. Mrs. Ashford, I'm sorry for your loss regarding your husband. That must have been very difficult. It was. And in the years since Thomas passed, you've continued living alone in a large home. Is that correct? Yes. That must be challenging. The maintenance, the upkeep, all those memories. Have you ever felt overwhelmed? I knew where he was going. No, I'm perfectly capable of managing my home. I see. But you did keep your late husband's belongings, isn't that right? His clothes, his personal items, things most people would have donated years ago? I kept some things, yes. Items that were meaningful to me. And you still use your late wife's bank card, even though she's been gone for, how long? 7 years. And it's my bank card, transferred to my name after Thomas died. I simply never requested a new one. But you understand how that might seem unusual, holding on to so many reminders of the past. Amanda stood. Objection, Your Honor. Relevance? How Mrs. Ashford chooses to grieve is not on trial here. Sustained. Mr. Blackwell, move on. He nodded, unbothered. Mrs. Ashford, you installed hidden cameras in your home to spy on your daughter and son-in-law, correct? To protect myself, yes. Without telling them? Without giving them any indication you were recording their private conversations. In strong, to stand full. They weren't private conversations. They were in my home, discussing crimes against me. In strong. Or were they discussing legitimate concerns about your welfare? Mrs. Ashford, you're 72 years old. Is it so unreasonable that your daughter might be worried about you living alone? In strong. There's a difference between concern and conspiracy. Is there? Or is it possible you misinterpreted their intentions? That what you saw as threatening was actually loving family members trying to help you? In strong. I felt anger rising in my chest. I didn't misinterpret anything. I watched my son-in-law break into my home at 4 a.m. and steal my mother's pearls. I heard them discuss drugging me. Those aren't the actions of concerned family members. So, you say you heard them discuss drugging you, but isn't it possible they were discussing your existing medications? Making sure you were taking them properly? Managing prescriptions, as many adult children do for aging parents? Trying to help you out? I am not aging in the way you're implying. I'm fully competent. You're weighing. Are you? You've been staying with your neighbor for weeks now, afraid to return to your own home. You've cut off all contact with your only daughter. You filed criminal charges against your family. Does that seem like the behavior of someone thinking clearly? Objection. Amanda was on her feet again, badgering the witness. Sustained. Mr. Blackwell, rephrase. Next moment, he smiled. Mrs. Ashford, have you considered that your grief over your husband, your isolation, your fear of aging, might have caused you to see threats where none existed? I looked him directly in the eyes. I have considered it. And I've dismissed it, because I have evidence, video evidence, bank records, police reports, testimony from multiple witnesses. None of those things are products of my imagination. They're facts. And the fact is that your client is a convicted felon with a history of elder abuse who married my daughter and targeted me exactly the way he targeted Dorothy Patterson 12 years ago. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Robert Blackwell's confident expression faltered for just a moment. No further questions, he said, returning to his table. I was excused from the stand. As I walked back to my seat, my legs shaking from adrenaline, I caught Sophia's eye again. For just a moment, just a fraction of a second, I saw something crack in her carefully maintained composure. Shame, perhaps, or regret. But then it was gone, replaced by the cold mask she had worn throughout the trial. The trial continued for 3 more days. Dorothy Patterson testified from a wheelchair, her voice thin but unwavering as she described how Marcus had gained her trust, isolated her from her children, and systematically drained her life savings. The parallel to my case was undeniable. Financial experts testified about the forged documents, the attempts to access my accounts, the pattern of fraudulent activity. Psychologists testified about the tactics used by financial predators to manipulate and control their victims. Marcus took the stand in his own defense, a risky move that his attorney clearly hoped would humanize him. He spoke earnestly about loving his wife, caring for his mother-in-law, only wanting to help. He claimed the security footage was taken out of context, that his visit to my home at 4 a.m. was to check on something he had forgotten during an earlier visit, that taking the pearls was a terrible misunderstanding. He had only been moving them to a safer location. But under Amanda's cross-examination, his story crumbled. He couldn't explain why he hadn't simply called me to say he was checking on the house. He couldn't explain why he had photographed my financial documents. He couldn't explain his previous conviction, except to say he had been wrongly accused, a claim that contradicted his guilty plea in Seattle 12 years ago. Sophia did not testify. Her attorney advised against it, and she remained silent throughout the trial, sitting in the gallery like a statue, watching her husband's defense collapse around her. Finally, closing arguments. Amanda delivered a powerful summary of the evidence, painting Marcus as a career criminal who had targeted me deliberately, methodically, with full knowledge of what he was doing. Robert Blackwell tried to salvage the case by emphasizing reasonable doubt, suggesting that family dynamics are complicated, that intentions are hard to prove, that perhaps Marcus had made poor choices, but not criminal ones. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. I sat in the hallway outside the courtroom with Patricia and Helena, unable to eat, unable to think about anything except what verdict they might reach. When the bailiff finally called us back in, my heart was pounding so hard I thought I might faint. We stood as the jury filed in, and I searched their faces for any hint of what was coming. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" Judge Morrison asked. "We have, Your Honor." The forewoman, a middle-aged teacher with kind eyes, stood and read from the paper in her hands. In the matter of the state versus Marcus Chen, on the charge of breaking and entering, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of theft, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit elder financial abuse, we find the defendant guilty. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Morrison banged her gavel for silence, and the forewoman continued through the rest of the charges. Guilty on all counts. I felt my knees buckle, and Helena caught my arm, steadying me. It was over. They had believed me. The evidence had been enough. Judge Morrison scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later, and Marcus was remanded into custody immediately. As the bailiffs led him away in handcuffs, he turned and looked at Sophia with an expression of such cold fury that even from across the courtroom, I felt its impact. Sophia ran from the courtroom, her composure finally shattering. I wanted to follow her, to say something, anything, but Patricia held my arm and shook her head. "Let her go. She'll have to find her own way through this." 2 weeks later, I returned to the courthouse for sentencing. Marcus received 12 years in prison, the maximum sentence allowed under state guidelines. Judge Morrison was unsparing in her remarks. "Mr. Chen, you are a predator. You have shown a complete lack of remorse for your actions, both in this case and in your previous conviction. You targeted a vulnerable, grieving woman with the intention of stealing everything she had worked a lifetime to build. The court has no sympathy for you and hopes that this sentence will ensure you cannot harm anyone else for a very long time." As Marcus was led away, he didn't look at me. He didn't look at Sophia, who sat weeping in the back row. He simply stared straight ahead, his face empty of emotion. A mask finally dropped to reveal nothing underneath. The day after sentencing, Detective Torres called me with news. Ashford, I wanted you to know that we filed charges against your daughter. Conspiracy to commit elder abuse, breaking and entering, and attempted fraud. She'll be arraigned next week. I had known this was coming, but hearing it spoken aloud still felt like a physical blow. Will she go to prison? That depends on many factors. Her attorney will likely try to negotiate a plea deal. She doesn't have the criminal history Marcus has, and if she's willing to testify about his manipulation of her, show genuine remorse, the prosecutor might be willing to reduce the charges. I see. Mrs. Ashford, I know this is difficult, but your daughter made choices. She may have been influenced by Marcus, but she still participated actively in the conspiracy. She still broke into your home. She still discussed drugging you. At some point, she has to be held accountable for her own actions. I know. Thank you, Detective. Sophia's arraignment was held in the same courtroom where Marcus had been tried. I attended, sitting in the back, watching as my daughter stood before the judge and entered a plea of not guilty. She looked small, diminished, nothing like the confident woman who had walked into my home, planning to steal everything I owned. As she was leaving the courtroom, flanked by her attorney, she saw me, our eyes met across the distance, and this time, I saw something different in her expression. Not coldness, not calculation, but something raw and broken and lost. She mouthed two words, "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. I simply watched her leave, uncertain whether her apology was genuine, or simply another manipulation, another attempt to control the narrative. That night, lying in Helena's guest room, that had become my refuge, I received a letter. Hand-delivered, left on Helena's porch with my name on the envelope. Sophia's handwriting. Mom, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I've destroyed any trust between us. But I need you to know that I am sorry. Truly, deeply sorry for everything I did. Marcus twisted me. I know that's not an excuse. I know I still made choices, still participated, still hurt you in ways I can never take back. But I want you to understand how it happened. When I met Marcus, I was in a bad place. My marriage beforehand had failed. I was in debt. I felt like a failure in every area of my life. Marcus made me feel special, capable, like I could be part of something bigger. He told me his past was behind him, that he had been wrongly convicted, that he just needed a fresh start. By the time I started seeing who he really was, I was already in too deep. He controlled our finances. He monitored my phone. He isolated me from friends. And he constantly reminded me that if I tried to leave, if I didn't cooperate, he would destroy me financially and socially. When he suggested we help you manage your finances, I convinced myself it was actually helpful, that you were declining, that you needed us. I let myself believe his lies because the alternative, admitting I had married another abuser, admitting I was making the same mistakes again, was too painful. But I was wrong. You weren't declining. You were sharp, aware, and I helped someone hurt you anyway. I betrayed my own mother to please a man who never loved me, who just saw me as a tool to access your money. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything. I'm going to plead guilty to the charges. I'm going to accept whatever punishment I deserve. But I needed you to know that I love you, that I have always loved you, even when I was doing terrible things. I hope someday you can have peace again. I hope you can return to your home and feel safe there. I hope my actions haven't destroyed you the way they've destroyed me. I'm sorry, Mom, for everything. Sophia. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. I wanted to believe her. God, how I wanted to believe that my daughter still existed somewhere beneath the person who had tried to rob me. But I had been fooled before. I had believed in her goodness while she was plotting against me. Maybe her remorse was real. Maybe it wasn't. Either way, it didn't change what had happened, what she had done, what I had lost. The next morning, I made a decision. I called Patricia Donovan and asked her to arrange a meeting with Sophia, supervised, in her attorney's office. I needed to look my daughter in the eye one more time and hear her explanation directly, not filtered through a letter that could have been written by anyone. The meeting took place in a sterile conference room. Patricia on one side of me, Sophia's attorney on the other. Sophia across the table looking like she hadn't slept in weeks. We sat in uncomfortable silence for a moment before she spoke. "Thank you for coming, Mom. I came because I need to understand. I need to hear from you, in your own words, how you could have done this to me." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "I don't have a good answer. Marcus was manipulative, yes, but that doesn't absolve me. I made choices. I participated. I convinced myself that we were helping you, because acknowledging the truth, that I was stealing from my own mother, was too horrible to face. When did it start? When did you and Marcus first discuss taking my money?" She wiped her eyes. "About a year after we got married. He kept talking about how unfair it was that you had this house, this money, while we were struggling. At first, I defended you. I said we had no right to your assets, but he wore me down. He made it seem reasonable, like we deserved it, like you wouldn't even miss it. Did you know about Dorothy Patterson? About what Marcus did to her?" Sophia nodded miserably. "He told me eventually. He said it was all a misunderstanding, that the old woman's family had turned her against him, that he'd been wrongly convicted. I wanted to believe him because I'd already married him. Admitting he was a criminal meant admitting I'd made another terrible mistake. So you helped him plan to do to me what he did to her? I didn't think of it that way. I told myself we were just protecting you, managing your finances, making sure you were safe. But yes, that's what we were doing, and I hate myself for it. Do you? Or do you just hate that you got caught?" She flinched at the question. "Both, probably. I hate that I got caught, because now I have to face consequences. But I also genuinely hate what I've become, what I let Marcus turn me into. I used to have principles, Mom. I used to know right from wrong. Somewhere along the way, I lost that." I studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. All I saw was exhaustion and regret. "If I had signed that power of attorney," I said quietly, "if you had gained control of my finances, what would have happened to me?" Sophia's face crumpled. "I don't know. Marcus talked about putting you in a care facility, someplace where you'd be looked after while we managed your assets. But the way he talked about it, so casually, like it was inevitable. I think, God, Mom, I think he would have hurt you. And I think I knew that on some level and chose not to see it." "You would have let him hurt me?" "I don't know. I want to say no, that I would have stopped him, but I'm not sure that's true. I was so deep in his control, so convinced that I had no other options. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just trying to be honest about how far I'd fallen. End of story." Stop. We sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, I spoke. "You're going to plead guilty?" "Yes. My attorney says I can probably get a reduced sentence with cooperation and remorse. Maybe 3 years instead of 10. It's still prison, but it's better than fighting this and losing." "What happens after prison?" She shook her head. "I don't know. I'll have a record. I'll have lost everything. My marriage, my mother, my freedom. I'll have to rebuild from nothing." "Good," I said, the word coming out harsher than I intended. "Because that's what you tried to do to me. Leave me with nothing. Now you'll understand what that feels like." Sophia's face contorted with pain, but she nodded. "I deserve that. I deserve all of it." I stood to leave, and she reached out as if to touch my hand, then thought better of it. "Mom, I know you won't forgive me. But can I ask one thing?" "What?" "Don't let what I did make you bitter. Don't let it destroy your faith in people. You're a good person. You always have been. Please don't let my failure poison the rest of your life." I looked at my daughter, this stranger who wore her face, and felt something inside me finally let go. The hope that she would somehow transform back into the little girl I remembered. The belief that our relationship could be salvaged. The dream that someday we would sit together again as mother and daughter, drinking tea and laughing about old times. Those hopes were dead. That relationship was gone. But I was still here, still alive, still capable of building something new. "Goodbye, Sophia," I said quietly. "Goodbye, Mom." I walked out of that conference room and didn't look back. 6 months later, I finally returned home. Detective Torres and a security consultant helped me update my locks, install new cameras, and ensure the house was safe. Helena came with me that first day, helping me walk through each room, reclaiming the space that had been violated. It was strange at first, sleeping in my own bed again, cooking in my own kitchen, sitting in Thomas's old chair by the window. The house felt different, touched by shadows that hadn't been there before. But slowly, day by day, it began to feel like mine again. I cleared out Sophia's old bedroom, donating her childhood belongings to charity. I couldn't bear to look at reminders of the daughter I'd thought I knew. In their place, I created a craft room, filling the space with watercolor supplies, knitting projects, evidence of a life continuing forward rather than trapped in the past. Sophia's trial resulted in a plea deal. 3 years in prison, 5 years probation, and a permanent restraining order preventing her from contacting me without explicit permission. I didn't attend her sentencing. I had said everything I needed to say in that conference room months earlier. Marcus's appeals were denied. He would serve his full 12 years, with no possibility of early release. Dorothy Patterson sent me a card when she heard the news. "Justice delayed is justice denied, but justice delivered is sweet." I framed that card and hung it in my study, a reminder that I had fought back, that I had won, that I had protected not just myself, but potentially countless future victims. Marcus would have targeted if I had remained silent. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. Margaret convinced me to speak at an elder abuse awareness conference in Boston. Standing before 200 people, sharing my story, I saw faces that reflected my own journey. Survivors, advocates, family members trying to protect their loved ones. A woman approached me afterward, elderly and frail, tears streaming down her face. "My son has been taking money from my account," she whispered. "I didn't know what to do. I thought it was my fault. But hearing your story, I understand now. It's not my fault, and I can fight back." I held her hands and gave her Detective Torres's number, Patricia's number, resources I wished I'd known about sooner. "You can fight back," I told her, "and you should. Because you deserve to be safe in your own life." That became my purpose in the months and years that followed. Speaking at conferences, volunteering with elder abuse prevention organizations, sharing my story so others would recognize the warning signs I'd missed for too long. Thomas would have been proud, I thought. He always said I was strongest when I was helping others. 2 years after the trial, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "From Sophia." I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity, or perhaps lingering maternal instinct, made me open it. "Mom, I'm writing this from prison, using the email system they allow inmates for approved contacts. I don't know if you'll read this. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. I've been in therapy here, working through why I made the choices I made, why I let Marcus control me, why I betrayed you. I'm learning about codependency, about trauma bonding, about how abuse victims sometimes become abusers themselves. None of this excuses what I did, but it helps me understand it. And understanding is the first step toward becoming someone different, someone better. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for a relationship. I'm just asking you to know that I'm doing the work. I'm trying to become the person you raised me to be. Before Marcus, before all my bad choices, before I lost my way. I hope you're well. I hope you're happy. I hope my actions haven't destroyed your ability to trust, to love, To believe in goodness. You deserve peace, Mom. More than anyone I've ever known. With love and regret, Sophia. I read the email 3 times, then closed it without responding. Maybe someday I would reply. Maybe someday I would be ready to forgive, or at least to acknowledge the steps she was taking toward redemption. But not today. Today I was still healing, still rebuilding, still learning to trust myself again. 5 years have passed since that morning when I first watched my daughter and son-in-law break into my home. 5 years of therapy, of legal proceedings, of slowly reclaiming my life from the shadow of betrayal. I'm 77 now. My hair is completely white, and my hands aren't as steady as they once were. But my mind is sharp, my spirit is resilient, and I wake each morning in my own home, surrounded by memories I've chosen to keep and new experiences I'm still creating. Helena and I travel together now, taking trips Thomas and I always planned but never quite managed. We've been to Italy, to Ireland, to the coast of Maine where autumn turns the trees into fire. I paint watercolors of the landscapes we visit, filling albums with images of a life continuing despite everything that tried to stop it. I've made peace with Sophia's absence. She's been released from prison now, living in another state, building a new life under a different name. She sends occasional emails updating me on her therapy progress, her new job, her attempts to atone. I read them, archive them, and move forward with my own journey. Some people think I'm harsh for not embracing reconciliation. They say she's my daughter, that family should forgive, that holding grudges only hurts the person carrying them. But those people don't understand that some betrayals cut so deep, the wound never fully heals. And that's okay. I've learned I can live with scars. I can be happy, fulfilled, purposeful, even with this permanent ache where my relationship with my daughter used to be. The truth is, I didn't lose a daughter 5 years ago. I lost an illusion of who I thought she was. A real Sophia, the one capable of planning to hurt me, had been there all along. I just hadn't wanted to see her. Now I see clearly. I see the difference between genuine love and manipulative obligation. I see the warning signs of financial abuse that I share with others so they can protect themselves. I see my own strength, forged in the fire of betrayal and loss, but not destroyed by it. My life is smaller now in some ways. I don't have grandchildren to spoil. I don't have family gatherings where multiple generations crowd around my dining room table. But it's also richer in authenticity. The people in my life, Helena, Margaret, my friends from the elder advocacy group, my neighbors who check on me not out of pity but genuine care, they're all here because they choose to be, not because of blood obligation. I've learned that family is not defined by genetics, but by loyalty, by respect, by the fundamental choice to prioritize someone else's well-being alongside your own. Marcus and Sophia were my family on paper, but they never treated me as such. Meanwhile, Helena, who shares no DNA with me, has been more of a daughter than Sophia ever was in those final years. Last month, I updated my will one final time. My estate, modest but secure, will be divided among several charities: the National Center on Elder Abuse, a scholarship fund for nursing students in Thomas's name, and the local library, where I spent so many afternoons reading to children. Sophia is mentioned in the will, only to confirm she is explicitly excluded, not out of spite, but out of a clear-eyed understanding that she made her choices and I'm making mine. This morning, I sat in my kitchen watching the sunrise paint my walls gold. The house was quiet, except for the ticking of Thomas's old clock and the soft hum of the refrigerator. Normal sounds, safe sounds, the sounds of a life reclaimed. I thought about the Victoria Ashford who opened that security camera alert 5 years ago, the terrified woman who watched her daughter plot against her. I thought about how far I've traveled from that moment of shock and betrayal. That Victoria was broken. This Victoria is whole, in a different way, but whole nonetheless. I've learned that survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about deciding every single day to keep building a life worth living despite the people who tried to tear it down. It's about finding purpose in pain, strength in scars, community in isolation. I've learned that being a mother doesn't guarantee being loved in return. that giving everything to your child doesn't obligate them to cherish you. That sometimes the people we create, raise, and nurture become strangers we no longer recognize. But I've also learned that losing a child to their own bad choices doesn't mean losing myself. That I can grieve the relationship we might have had while still celebrating the life I've built anyway. That my value doesn't depend on whether my daughter chose to honor it. Some nights, I still wake from dreams where Sophia is 5 years old again, laughing in the backyard, calling for me to watch her dance. In those moments between sleep and waking, I remember loving her with uncomplicated fierceness, believing she would always be my little girl, my greatest achievement, my legacy. Then I fully wake and I remember the truth. And I choose, consciously, deliberately, to let go of that little girl who no longer exists and embrace the woman I've become instead. A survivor, an advocate, a cautionary tale with a triumphant ending. This is my story. This is how I learned that the people we trust most can become the people who hurt us worst, and how I fought back anyway. This is how I discovered that 72 is not too old to be brave, to demand justice, to rebuild a life from the ruins of betrayal. If you're listening to this and recognizing yourself in my story, if you're afraid of someone you should be able to trust, if you're being told you're confused or paranoid when you know something is wrong, please believe me, trust your instincts. Document everything. Reach out for help. You are not too old, too confused, or too unimportant to deserve protection. You are not alone, and you are stronger than you know. I'm Victoria Ashford. I'm 77 years old. I'm a survivor of elder financial abuse, and I'm here to tell you that it's never too late to fight for your right to live safely, freely, and with dignity in the home you built and the life you earned. You are not alone, and you are stronger than you know. And I'm here to tell you that it's never too late to fight for your right to live safely, freely, and with dignity in the home you built. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for witnessing my truth. And thank you for being part of a community that refuses to let the most vulnerable among us become invisible victims. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. I wake up every morning now, choosing to live, to matter, to speak truth even when it's painful. That's my revenge against the people who tried to silence me, refusing to be silenced. That's my legacy, not the money I'll leave to charity, but the voice I've found and the courage I've shared. Some battles you fight with lawyers and evidence. Some you fight simply by refusing to disappear. I'm still here. I'm still standing. And I'm not going anywhere. This is Victoria Ashford reminding you that your voice matters, your safety matters, and you are never too old to fight for what's rightfully yours. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, stay strong, and remember, if something feels wrong, it probably is. Trust yourself. Always. Until next time.